Good evening, everyone, on another cold, blustery winter day, but not too cold for these brave young souls on Lake of the Isles. And take heart, it should warm up for the weekend. For all the news of the day from Washington to Minnesota, NewsNight Minnesota is next.
From Twin Cities Public Television, this is NewsNight Minnesota, a statewide program of news, analysis, and commentary.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NewsNight.
Good evening. Glad you could join us again tonight. Coming up on tonight's show, Mr. Gutknecht goes to Washington. The freshman Republican representative talks live with us about the new order of things. Then another notable politician, Minneapolis Mayor Sharon Sayles Belton. She joins us to talk about her first year in office and the search for a new chief of police. Then a rip-roaring ride through the new production of Don Juan Giovanni. And on the continuing arts theme, an interview with Rebecca Peterson, just named recipient of the Sally Ordway Irvine Award for her work in the arts community. Those stories and interviews in a moment, but first, some of the headlines of the day. Carson Pirie Scott is out, Melvyn's is in. In a deal announced today, Melvyn's, a moderately priced apparel chain owned by Minneapolis-based Dayton Hudson, will buy 8 of the 9 Carson stores located in Minnesota for $74 million. Only the Carson store in Rochester will remain. 7 of the other 8 Carsons will become Melvyn's. And the Daytons at Ridgedale will take over the existing Carson Pirie Scott store there. That means Dayton's will be competing against the Dayton's own Melvyn's. But the stores do cater to different demographics. The deal should be completed by March. And in a related note, Dayton Hudson announced today that its sales rose 9.6% for the past year.
Well, the Minneapolis chapter of the NAACP has a new president, Bill Davis. He's been active in the organization for about 20 years now and says his first goal is to increase the membership from 600 to 1,500. Mayor Sharon Sayles Belton was on hand to swear in Davis, as well as other new board members and officers. The Minneapolis chapter will host the National NAACP Conference this coming July.
The Mille Lacs Band of Chippewa plans to limit winter spearfishing, agreeing to a request by the State Department of Natural Resources. The band could spearfish in open water off its reservation land, but has agreed to fish only in lakes which have frozen over. The state DNR says that this agreement means that the spearfishing will not adversely impact the fish population.
Well, yesterday we brought you some of the opening scenes of the 104th Congress in Washington.
Congratulations. The gentlemen and gentlewomen are now members of the 104th Congress.
Well, one of the gentlemen there enjoying all of that hoopla, in fact, one who helped to bring about the changing of the guard, Gil Gutknecht, freshman representative from Minnesota's 1st District. He's here now to tell us about what's gone on so far within the Beltway. Thanks for joining us tonight. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. First of all, give us your reaction just to being there in Washington during this time of so much transition and change.
Well, it's certainly an exciting time to be here in Washington. I think Hobart Rowan, a columnist here in Washington, said a couple of weeks ago that this is probably the most historic time in Washington since 1933. And I think most of the people in this city understand that we're going to see a tremendous change, and of course that change began yesterday.
What are some of the things that you actually have accomplished within the last 24 hours? I know you guys have been awake quite a long time.
Well, yeah, in fact, I was just thinking about it. I got back to my room last night at about 2:30, or I should say this morning at 2:30, and the day began early yesterday with a prayer service at 9 o'clock in the morning. And as you may know, I was followed around most of the day, in fact, the last couple of days, by a film crew from CNN, and with all the other events, we had about 50 family and friends out here. It was an extremely busy day, and I think, of course, what the voters want to know is that we essentially did accomplish what they sent us here to do and what we promised we would do on the first day in terms of changing the way Congress does business and reforming some of the rules of Congress.
You've got 99 days left in these first 100 days. What are some of the big things left for you and the Republicans in that contract with America in the first 100 days?
Well, I think some of the easier issues have now been resolved. You know, yesterday we promised that we would make Congress live by the same rules as everybody else. That was certainly high on the agenda for yesterday, so we've accomplished that. We said we would downsize the Congress, we would limit the number of committees, we would cut the amount of staff, we would limit the terms of the chairman of some of those committees. We would change the way the Congress actually sets up its budget so that a budget cut will actually be a budget cut, and when we increase a budget, it'll actually show as an increase. You know, Washington accounting used to show some increases as actual cuts. If you cut the projected increase, they called that a cut here in Washington. We also said that we were going to audit the House's books, and we were going to open up the process so that both the committee and the subcommittee meetings now will be open to the public. That's what we promised we would do on the first day, and I'm happy to report to the voters in the state of Minnesota we've kept that promise. Some of the tougher issues coming, though, will be relative to welfare reform. We've promised to change the way we do the welfare system, and that's going to be a very controversial issue. We talked about making a stronger national defense. That's going to be a tough issue. And as you go through the rest of the contract, they're not going to be easy issues to resolve, but we've given it our word that we're going to give it our best effort to get those issues to the floor of the House and have an honest vote under open rules from here on out. And I think we're going to do our best to live up to our end of the agreement.
I'm interested, Mr. Gutknecht, just in your first personal impression walking into Congress as a freshman, and what was it like, and how did it compare, for instance, to your time at the state legislature?
Well, to be honest, it wasn't, there wasn't quite the emotional feeling to me being sworn in for the first time as a member of Congress as there was when I first went to the Minnesota legislature. It didn't seem like as big a jump as from coming literally from the private sector into the state legislature. So I'd been preparing literally for about a dozen years for yesterday. But it still began to strike me, especially after yesterday's prayer service that we had. The final song was sung by a black choir, and they sang the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And when they did, it sort of struck me that in just a few hours, I said to myself as I left the church, you know, in a few hours, I'm going to take the same oath of office that Abraham Lincoln took about 135 years ago. And literally, we are going to change history beginning at 12 noon. And so I think from that point on, I think the dimensions of what was about to happen began to sink in. But before that, we've been really too busy to even really think about it. We
don't want to let you go before we ask about that block of wood there that we understand is a part of Minnesota. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes, I wasn't particularly pleased with the sound of the gavel when I first came here and heard the sort of tink, tink, tink sound. And I'd always found the sound of the gavel in the Minnesota House to be rich and full. And so I took it upon myself to have one made identical to the one we use in the Minnesota House. And I gave it to Newt Gingrich yesterday morning. And he had several gavels and several tone blocks. He did use it when he first took the rostrum as Speaker of the House and used it for most of the day. Then he substituted for the old one later in the day when it began to bounce around too much, and he said he's going to try and get some rubber pads so it doesn't bounce around so much. But I think most of the people who had a chance to hear it found that it did have a much richer sound, and it gave more authority to the Speaker. So hopefully he'll keep using it from here on out.
Well, listen, up until the block of wood, we had been talking about some very serious issues that you will have to tackle this year. But tell us, are you having fun while you're there so far?
Really, I'm having so much fun, I sometimes have to wonder why they pay us to come out here. It's been a great experience, and you know, I'm one of the luckiest people you'll ever get a chance to meet, because I'm one of the few people, I think, that really gets to do what he really likes to do. And I'm so thankful and fortunate and especially appreciative of the people in the 1st District for giving me this chance. Even if I only get one term, I'm going to try and make the most of it.
Well, thank you for joining us, and of course, you know, we will be checking in and keeping a watch on what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
From the national political scene to the local, today Mayor Sharon Sayles Belton asked for some help from the public to name the new Minneapolis Chief of Police.
Community-oriented policing should also include community-oriented hiring. So today, we are opening up a community comment line to give citizens of our community an opportunity to participate in part in the selection of the new chief.
Mayor Sayles Belton joins us live on this evening, the 1-year anniversary of your taking office, to talk about not only the search for the new police chief, but other things in that first year. Mayor, where are you exactly in the search for the chief? I know there are applicants, you have a committee. Where does it stand?
Well, on October 28th, we named a citizen committee to help me in the search process for the chief of police. That citizen committee is headed up by one of our local business leaders, Larry Perlman from Ceridian. Since the committee has been established, we have sought the help of a professional police search firm, and that firm has helped us generate over 30 plus applicants from across the country. We also have some local and some regional candidates. Most recently, the committee pared that down to about 12 people. They're going to start interviews of those 12 in about a week. And by the end of the month, they're going to present me with 4 finalists.
Any internal candidates among those?
There were internal candidates who were in the pool of 30 plus. And there's likely to be some internal candidates in the group that are going to be interviewed.
Is it more difficult to find applicants based on the experiences that Chief Locks at least claimed he had, the frustrations he had in the final months? And has that made it more difficult? We
hired the Police Executive Research Forum to help us with this chief process. And one of the things that their consultant has said to us is that people were reluctant to come to the Minneapolis area for 3 reasons. 1, weather, which some days I can understand. 2, salary. The salaries for police chiefs, particularly on either coast, are a lot higher than what we pay here in the Midwest and here in Minneapolis in particular. And then the third thing is that some of them express concern about the structure of government in Minneapolis, and the fact that the police chief had to be responsive to 14 individual bosses as opposed to 1. And that kept some people from applying.
Okay, that's certainly one thing that Chief Locks, former Chief Locks, talked about. He didn't feel he had enough control. Is that something that may be changed, or whoever it is that comes up next, they're going to have to adhere to it?
Well, the truth of the matter is that these things are prescribed by charter. They do give the mayor a little bit more authority, but the policy issues that the police department has to work through and with really are monitored by members of the City Council and a City Council Policy Committee. So those are the realities until the citizens of our community decide that we need a new and different structure.
Very quickly, before I move on to the first year, you're asking for the public's help, in effect, on this police search. What do you expect from that, briefly?
Well, one of the things that we did with the Citizen Committee is that we talked about establishing the criteria. What are we really looking for in a police chief? Given all the problems we've had over the years, given the last set of problems that we've had in this last year, what do people really want? And they set out on some criteria, and you can imagine what some of it is. We want somebody who has got some national experience and some credibility. We want somebody who knows how to work with all of the members of the community, and our community is becoming more and more diverse. Well, we set those criteria out, we shared them with the public, and then we created a hotline, so to speak, in the mayor's office where citizens of the community can call in and give us their opinion about that criteria and others, and also give us specific questions that they want us to ask these police chief candidates. And we're making a commitment that we're going to ask those questions to those candidates and then report back to the public what their responses were. Today we listed 2 numbers. I hope that we can share them today.
We're coming up right in a moment, I think, on the screen. 673-2984 and 673-3363.
Well, I want you to know that before I left over here, the volunteers were already over there. They're waiting to take calls. In fact, the calls started coming in early this afternoon.
So people are interested.
First heard about it, and they are calling. I mean, we thought we'd have 5 or 6 volunteers. The office is actually full of them, and people are calling, and they're giving us their opinion, and they feel good that they have a chance to do that.
We don't have a lot of time left, but we'd like to get to what you consider to be some of your accomplishments in this first year.
Well,
very quickly, if we can.
Well, let me just share with you that we set out on some promises to the public in my State of the City address. We talked about making the city of Minneapolis safer. We talked about supporting our families and our young people. Government reform. We talked about making it more convenient for businesses to work with the city of Minneapolis so they can do what they know how to do, which is create jobs. We had a whole litany of things that we said we were going to do, and I'm really pleased to tell you that we kept our promises. There are more police officers on the street. They're working closer with the citizens of our community. This summer for our young people, we gave them some alternatives to being on the street and getting in harm's way. We had something called Fat Summer, which I didn't know what fat meant, but it means something like cool. We did good things for our young people, had our parks and our school buildings open well past 10 o'clock, and it really had an effect, on our crime rate. Government reform. We did many things to move the city of Minneapolis forward on the issues of civil service reform. Our charter department heads, including our police chief, had indicated that he can't fire people who do a bad job. We're going to change that for City Hall. We've made good progress, and I'm pleased to let the public know that.
Okay, thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
Okay.
Minnesota has been chosen to take part in a national effort to identify and study infectious diseases. The Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta will give the state $350,000 in the first year of the 5-year study. State epidemiologist Michael Osterholm said the study is desperately needed.
This particular program is an outgrowth of several national reports, the first coming in the late 1980s, which outlined the substantial lack of resources and infrastructure that we have in this country to address not only the basic infectious disease problems of yesteryear, but a number of new and emerging infection problems that as late as several years ago we didn't even know existed.
Dr. Osterholm will be on Almanac tomorrow night to explain what the state will do with the CDC grant. That's Friday night, tomorrow night on Almanac.
Well, on Thursday night, we usually bring you a preview of some entertainment events with our arts correspondent, Melody Gilbert. Well, Melody's on vacation, but there's still plenty to do this weekend, including this play by the Theater de la Jeune Lune. It's Don Juan Giovanni, and it's a bit interpretive. Here's a look both in front of and behind the curtain.
I'm Don Giovanni, and this is Don Juan.
I'm supposed to seduce everybody.
We're traveling from one woman to the next. That's where all the seductions take place. Wish us luck.
Well, that play runs through the end of January at the Theater de la Jeune Lune in Minneapolis.
Staying with the arts theme for a while, Rebecca Peterson joins us. She's one of the recipients of the First Bank Sally Ordway Irvine Awards, recognized for Rebecca's initiative in the arts world. Welcome to you. Glad you could come.
Thanks.
Rebecca, you're from Fergus Falls. You've brought arts to Fergus Falls in a renewed way. Tell us what you've done there and what brought you the award.
Well, actually the arts were in Fergus Falls before I got there, but I was one of those people that recognized just how much talent there was in the community. We moved to Fergus Falls 3 years ago when my husband took an orchestra teaching position, which was a sign to me that the arts were healthy in Fergus Falls. I got involved with the Center for the Arts about the time that the renovation project began on an old theater, and we're 2/3 complete and hope to open in 1995 while we continue to do programming in the community.
And you've raised something like $700,000
$770,000
to refurbish the theater.
That's right.
That's an amazing feat in itself.
Well, in a community the size of Fergus Falls, which is about 12,000, I think it's spectacular. We did get a McKnight grant for $125,000, but the rest of the funds have been all raised locally.
And in terms of the theater, or what will this allow the artists there to be able to do?
Well, it gives the artists a home. We have a community orchestra that is always searching for a place to perform. We have a children's theater and a community theater, as well as other musicians in town that need a venue for performance. There are other theaters, but not downtown, and they're busy with school activities and the community college activities. So we're really excited about providing that kind of a place for our artists.
Is it going to be a challenge once the theater is restored and this money is spent to keep it operating in a positive way? I mean,
well, of course, that's a concern for a lot of people, but we've spent a lot of time putting together a business plan which includes renting the building to other places, a contract with the school district to do performances there. So we have a full calendar of events planned in addition to the things that we'll be doing. So I think the building will pay for itself, and we know that the arts in Fergus Falls have managed to pay for themselves over the past few years.
For those who don't know, Fergus Falls is in northwestern Minnesota, about
right.
100 miles from the Twin
Oh,
Cities?
it's a 3-hour drive, so about 160 miles, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for being here, Rebecca. It's
Thanks
a great
for inviting
project.
me.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, I tell you, tonight is Ron Hamburg's last night. We knew it had to come, and here it is. I think it shocks us anyway because it is his last night. When he first took this job, it was with the understanding that he would be here for just a year. He wanted to get this show up and running and then go back to his career as a novelist. That year has come and gone all too quickly. But this is not the first news operation that Ron Hamburg has walked away from. 4.5 years ago, he said goodbye to his colleagues at WCCO-TV, where he was general manager. He'd been there for more than 35 years. Well, we asked a friend of his from those years to do the commentary this evening. Here's Dave Nimmer.
I think that the community ought to be grateful to Handberg for several things. One, the idea for NewsNight Minnesota had been talked about for years, and nothing ever happened. It was planned for, it was discussed, and Handberg made it happen. He put together a crew who could go out and gather the news, they could assess the news, they could write the news, they could produce the news, they could edit the news, and they could put the damn thing on the air. And not only that, they could do it Monday night, but Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. And that's a great accomplishment. Secondly, he gave a chance to put talking heads on the air, people who could actually discuss issues and have a dialogue with each other, and they could do it for more than 9 or 12 or 15 seconds. And that's a wonderful idea, particularly in times when issues need to be discussed. I had to admit there was a night or two when I learned more about wind power than I ever needed to know in this century. Third, they delivered on the promise of cultural diversity. We all give lip service to it. But NewsNight provided an opportunity for people from different groups, different neighborhoods, different colors, different backgrounds to sit down and talk about issues that mattered. They got a chance to bitch about their leaders. They got a chance to complain about the community. They got a chance to offer suggestions. They got a chance to say things. And nobody else had given that kind of exposure. And finally, I think Handberg celebrated gray hair. My friend Shelby has little touches of gray at the temples, which I know now he's trying to dye. And Majors has flecks of gray in his hair, and you can see him sparkle once in a while. Well, Handberg's outright silver. There's no way to hide it. You got to deal with it. That man is middle-aged. And for one, like the hell out of that idea. Handberg is middle-aged. I assume that with that comes some wit and wisdom, and there was a night or two that he could demonstrate that, by gosh, the years did pay off. So I'm grateful for that. And finally, I'm grateful that he's getting out of there. The man is my fishing companion, and he needs all the help and the training and the background he can get in a fishing boat. Handberg does not take to fishing naturally. And I want him to spend more time on the contemplative part of his life, on the spiritual part of his life. Simply, he'd be a better companion in a boat. And that's what I want.
Well, we should note that Ron will not be gone entirely. He has told us that he's going to be perched on our shoulders in spirit no matter what. And he has also consented to an ongoing consultancy work for NewsNight Minnesota.
This is all a bit of a surprise, but I do want to say very briefly that it's been a joy to be part of developing NewsNight Minnesota. It's been a joy to work with the staff of NewsNight and of all the other people at KTCA. They've been wonderful and enthusiastic, and most especially, Carolyn, to you, who brings charm and intelligence to this set. It's been a great experience, and I'll continue to watch, and this program needs everybody's support, and I hope it receives it. So to you and to everybody, thanks very much. I'll continue to watch, and it's been great. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
NewsNight Minnesota is made possible by the contributors to the Power of Two Campaigns Program Fund, with major grants from the Blandin Foundation and the McKnight Foundation. Business reporting on NewsNight Minnesota is presented through a grant from Thunheim Santrizo's Public Relations, understanding business strategy and providing creative communications.